So after the success of the first Die Hard, a sequel would only make sense, and at the turn of that decade, we were given just that. Die Hard 2, often subtitled as Die Harder, was released in July of 1990 and directed by Rennie Harlin, once again starring Bruce Willis as everyone's favorite invincible cop, John McClane. Those of you who watched my previous video on Die Hard will know that I hailed it as my favorite action movie ever made and a contender for one of my favorite films of all time, so this sequel has a lot to live up to. Did it do that? Well, let's take a look. Just as a fair warning though, if you haven't seen the first Die Hard, in which case I'd like to ask what the hell you've been doing with your life, this video will contain spoilers for it. Consider this your warning. Die Hard 2 takes place 2 years after the original film, as John McClane has since moved to LA to live with his wife Holly after the events of the Nakatomi Plaza skyscraper seizure. John has landed in Washington, D.C. at the Washington Dulles International Airport and is awaiting Holly's arrival when the airport is suddenly attacked and taken over by a former U.S. Colonel, William Stewart, who has the landing strips cut off and communications with the tower muted, requesting they allow him to leave the airport in a stolen plane with a captured criminal being transported to the airport. Realizing Holly is still trapped up in the sky with no way down, and with the plane slowly running out of fuel, John once again must save the day, regain control of the airport, and land the plane safely. Die Hard 2's story is probably one of its weaker aspects, to be honest, and the entire movie makes no sense at all if you have any knowledge of airports or how they work. Plot holes aside, I just can't tell why, but Die Hard 2 just doesn't feel as charming as the first. John McClane is still just like his old cocky self, which is good, but I feel where this movie lacks is in the side characters, which just don't feel as good as the first movie. To top it all off, with the exception of some of the characters such as Marvin the Janitor, nearly every single character in this movie is an absolute dick. I know that was the case for the first movie, but with Die Hard 2, it feels like the dickishness is that even a word? It feels like they're just more prevalent than the first movie. On top of that, in the first film, whenever someone was a dick to John, it lasted probably 20 seconds max, and then they got put in their place, such as, I'm not the one who just got butt-fucked on national TV, Dwayne Robinson. In Die Hard 2, however, John is just getting yelled at, scene after scene, and it gets old really fast, especially when guys are just screaming at him for doing his job. The arguments die down later on, but I just feel like the isolation of John was one of the things that helped him in his endeavors in Nakatomi, and one of the things that made the original Die Hard so entertaining. He didn't need to put up with any of that, and it let him go farther with being a man of action rather than a man of arguments. Putting aside all of that, though, the one thing that really makes me love this story a whole lot more is William Sadler as William Stewart. Whereas Hans Gruber could have had some redeeming qualities and had some manners, Stewart does not care about anyone or anything, and he's willing to put thousands of lives in danger just to get what he wants, and it is glorious. Getting into some of the other things I like, the action scenes are absolutely amazing. Dare I say it, Die Hard 2 almost beats the original at its own game at times. There are just so many scenes in Die Hard 2 which just felt so cool to watch. There's one scene in this movie which takes place outside with all the characters on a bunch of snowmobiles, and it wouldn't surprise me if Infinity War didn't use this scene as inspiration for the mission Cliffhanger in Modern Warfare 2. The action scenes are easily the best part of this movie, and it's the other reason along with Stewart which makes Die Hard 2 such a fun movie to watch, and I'd be lying if I said the movie didn't make me giggle in excitement and put some gigantic smiles on my face. John McClane is packing even more one-liners than before, and there's just something so satisfying about seeing John rip through terrorists like tissue paper. He's such a likable guy, and you can't help but want to see him win. In terms of other negatives, I don't have many more for Die Hard 2, but here's the thing I think is important to remember. The original Die Hard was an absolute masterpiece of a film and put together a great combination of story, characters, writing, and almost anything else I can think of. Die Hard 2 feels more like it's trying to put together an entertaining sequel which keeps you happy rather than try to one-up the original, and while I know that's kind of the point of sequels, I still see Die Hard 2 as an entertaining, gripping, and most importantly, fun sequel to one of my favorite movies of all time, and fun is the key word here. It's not a bad or even average movie by any means, but one thing it absolutely does well is fun. I love watching my old boy John go through hell to save the masses once more, and that's what I wanted more than anything. I didn't enjoy the story as much, and I don't know if I would say it's one of those bucket list types of movies like the original, but did I have a bad time? Absolutely not. I'd say if you can find Die Hard 2, by all means see it. It's a blast of a movie with a great protagonist and villain, and it makes you feel good and entertained while you watch a bunch of terrorists get killed, which is what I love to see in Die Hard.